Welcome to the final presentation in Play and Pedagogies in the Early Years. This is topic 10, creating playful spaces. In this topic, we'll look at defining what we mean by learning environments in the early years, look at some of the links between policies and practices, talk about the difference between built and natural environments, and look at some examples of the fusion of built and natural environments. And we'll just touch on very briefly in this presentation on the concept of risky play. Is that okay? The background reading is from Arthur Beach, Deeth, Dockett and Farmer. We'll talk more about that in the tutorials, but it would be really helpful for you to have read that before you attend your tutorial. I've also listed some additional readings and resources on the unit site for you that should help you if you're researching this topic. So defining key terms, I'm returning to the Early Years Learning Framework to see what it has to say about learning environments, and it has a lot to say. So firstly, the Early Years Learning Framework talks about learning environments as welcoming spaces that reflect and enrich the lives and identities of children and their families. So it must be something that's responsive to children and families' interests and needs, which suggests that it's not something that the educators set up and that is void of input from children and their families. The next point is that these environments support learning and that they're vibrant and flexible spaces and responsive to the interests and abilities of each child, that they cater for different learning capacities, which is that notion of inclusion that we've touched on before, and different learning styles. And I like this concept of inviting children and their families to contribute ideas, interests and questions. So again, outdoor spaces are features of Australian learning environments. Obviously in some climates, some countries, it's not as easy to facilitate an outdoor environment. They offer a vast array of possibilities not available indoors, and there is a particular emphasis on nature in these environments, including plants, trees, edible gardens, big feature of mud and water and other elements from nature. And again, there's this notion of inviting, that outdoor spaces invite open-ended interactions, spontaneity, risk-taking, exploration, discovery and connection with nature, that they foster an appreciation of the natural environment and environmental awareness and provide a platform for ongoing environmental education. Indoor and outdoor environments support all aspects of children's learning and invite conversations between children, early childhood educators, families and the broader community. We'll see some examples later on in this presentation where that invitation has certainly been taken up by some centres. The materials enhance learning when they reflect what is natural and familiar and also introduce novelty to provoke interest and more complex and increasingly abstract thinking. Here's a link to last week's topic. I'm presuming the indoors, the digital technologies enable children to access global connections and resources and encourage new ways of thinking. I guess actually having said that, that wouldn't be limited to indoors. It would be fascinating to see how children would engage with something like a drone going around their local environment. Environments and resources also highlight our responsibility for a sustainable future and promote children's understandings about their responsibility to care for the environment. So there's a focus on sustainability in terms of it being included in that term in learning environments. Educators can encourage children and families to contribute ideas, interests and questions to the learning environment. So again, there's that reiteration, if you like, that this is not something, the environment is not something that the educators construct without consultation and negotiation with children and their families, or should not be something that's constructed without that kind of conversation happening. They support engagement by allowing time for meaningful interactions and provide a range of opportunities for children, individuals, and shared experiences. So that's a really important point that again is picked up in the literature and in the some examples that you'll see online, that not all of these spaces need to be loud, boisterous, collaborative spaces, that there is a need for children to have some individual space and also some quiet space. So looking to the links between policies and practices, I'm going to start with the National Quality Framework here, because there's a whole quality area 3, that focuses on the physical environment and ensuring that it's safe, suitable, and provides a rich and diverse range of experiences that promote children's learning and development. So let's have another drill down a bit further into NQF Standard 3. So Standard 3.1, I won't actually go into all of these because I'm going to play you a little video in the moment that goes through that, but sometimes it's useful to see a little visual overview of what the standards are and how they're broken down, and that might be something you can come back to if you wanted to refer to those specifically. But that's Quality Area 3, and it's broken down, as I said, into 3 different standards and sub-elements within those standards. And you'll see that they've reflecting the early years learning framework around the key components that they need to be safe, and that the environments need to invite play. But there's also, again, that notion about being the focus on the environment and a sustainable future. In this video, Anne Stonehouse takes you through those quality standards, and there's really no point me doing what the experts do better, so I'll leave you to watch that video, and I'll come back after Anne has presented that video to you.
The spaces where we live and work have a huge effect on us. For children, the physical environment is especially important. This means that it is essential for educators to pay attention to the physical environment. At a basic level, physical environments for children must be safe and healthy. But beyond this level of meeting basic needs, the physical environment is full of potential and opportunities for children to learn about the world of people and things and about themselves. The physical environment is not a backdrop for learning. It offers opportunities for learning. It can inspire, challenge, encourage, and excite. The possibilities are enormous. It's the role of educators to turn these possibilities into real opportunities, to make the physical environment comfortable, inviting, and interesting. When children are in environments that offer opportunities and rich experiences, they learn and develop. Quality Area 3 in the National Quality Standard focuses on the physical environment. This quality area includes attention to both indoor and outdoor spaces and encourages educators to provide children with easy access to both. Quality Area 3 includes 3 standards. Standard 3.1 is that the design and location of the premises is appropriate for the operation of a service. Standard 3.2 is that the environment is inclusive, promotes competence, independent exploration, and learning through play. And Standard 3.3 is that the service takes an active role in caring for its environment and contributes to a sustainable future. Let's take a closer look at these standards one by one. Standard 3.1 is about the physical facilities of the service, including its design and location. It includes the amount, arrangement, and use of indoor and outdoor space. The standard reminds us that children are learning indoors and outdoors, and that the spaces, as well as what's in them, affect children's well-being and learning. Time outdoors is just as important as time indoors. Having enough space, arranging it carefully, and thinking about the materials and equipment in it enables educators to create environments that will keep children safe and give them choices about where they are and what they are doing. Environments need to encourage children to explore, experiment, create, express themselves, and interact with others in positive ways. The physical environment also provides quiet spaces and private places. Environments that work well free educators up to spend time interacting positively with children. Standard 3.1 has 3 elements. The first element is that outdoor and indoor spaces, buildings, furniture, equipment, facilities, and resources are suitable for their purpose. Their purpose is promoting children's learning and development and ensuring the health and safety of children, families, educators, and staff. The second element is that premises, furniture, and equipment are safe, clean, and well maintained. Every child has the right to be safe, and educators and others also need to be safe at work. That means keeping buildings, furniture, and equipment safe and clean. Good maintenance, cleaning, and safety precautions are essential basic elements of any care and education service. The third element is that facilities are designed or adapted to ensure access and participation by every child in the service and to allow flexible use and interaction between outdoor and indoor space. All children using a service must have physical access to its facilities, and the environment needs to include both indoor and outdoor spaces with easy movement between them. The environment also needs to be flexible so that it caters for a range of children's abilities and interests. Let's move on to the second standard. Standard 3.2 is about creating environments that are inviting and inclusive and that support children's exploration, creativity, and learning through play and physical activity, both of which are very important for children's learning and development. Environments that support learning are vibrant and flexible spaces that are responsive to the interests and abilities of each child. They cater for different learning capacities and learning styles and invite children and families to contribute ideas, interests, and questions. This standard contains 2 elements. The first element is that outdoor and indoor spaces are designed and organized to engage every child in quality experiences in both built and natural environments. It's the job of educators to think carefully about environments and to shape them so they provide good quality experiences for children. The design and organization of the physical environment has a powerful effect on children. Sometimes small changes can make big differences. The second element is that resources, materials, and equipment are sufficient in number, organized in ways that ensure appropriate and effective implementation of the program, and allow for multiple uses. In other words, educators provide children with the tools they need to play, choose, and find interesting things to do. Materials and equipment need to be able to be used in a variety of ways so that they cater for different interests, abilities, and learning styles. Standard 3.2 focuses on encouraging all children's independence and competence as they engage with the physical environment. But isn't that dangerous? It could be, but it won't be if children have the right spaces, equipment, materials, and support. A safe environment for children should never mean a boring environment. In fact, the National Quality Standard encourages educators to offer chances for appropriate risk-taking. Learning to manage risks is important. The National Quality Standard also tells us that children need opportunities to be active, messy, and noisy, and play on a large scale. The final standard is about caring for the environment and using sustainable practices in the service. When they explore outdoors, children can learn to appreciate the natural world. Educators can extend that interest and appreciation. They can also help children to become more aware of the impact of human activity on the environment and ways to create a more sustainable future. The first element of Standard 3.3 is that sustainable practices are embedded in the service operations. This means that educators work with children to learn about the sustainable use of resources, and together they put in place sustainable practices in the service. These practices might include recycling, using recycled resources, making efforts to use energy efficiently, or conserving water. There are lots of possibilities. It is important that children are actively involved in all of these practices. Involving families and the wider community can also have benefits. The second element of Standard 3.3 is that children are supported to become environmentally responsible and show respect for the environment. We want children to develop an understanding and respect for the natural environment, including the interdependence between people, plants, animals, and the land. This means providing children with information and explanations about how the environment works. When children learn to care for and appreciate the natural world and the resources around them and beyond, they develop respect for their physical environment. And that's quality area 3, the physical environment. But there are 2 more things you need to do. First, read the guide to the National Quality Standard. It contains more detailed information on quality area 3, and it has some great suggestions for how to apply the standards. Secondly, think carefully about your own practice. Now that you know more about quality area 3, what do you already do well? What might you do differently? You will have your own questions, but here are some to get you started. What makes the physical environment interesting and enriching for children? What opportunities do you provide for children to be involved in planning and setting up the environment? What are the challenges involved in providing environments that cater for a range of interests and abilities and allow full participation by every child? Why do children need quiet and private spaces? How do you create learning opportunities in outdoor spaces? Do you allow children to take reasonable risks? How do you show children that you value and respect your environment?
Looking at built and natural environments, this is a newsletter from Good Start, and it's a newsletter talking about a new service that's just about to open or could well have opened by now in the heart of the Brisbane CBD. So this is a built environment. It's on the top floor of a building in the middle of Adelaide Street. So the challenge of combining indoor and outdoor spaces in this environment is one that the Good Start people have really taken on board. You'll see some comments in there by Dr. Leslie Jones. Leslie's a great friend of mine, and we've had lots of chats about this particular, how exciting this concept is. The centre has got incredible facilities for children to play with water and to have the faux grass and the trees that go up through 2 stories of an atrium. I can't wait to see it. There's water play, bike circuits, rope bridges. It sounds like an amazing space and a really conscious effort on the behalf of Good Start to ensure that this centre, as I said, in a high-rise building, has ticks all the boxes from the NQF's point of view, and it's a big service. So I'll leave you to read that yourselves, but it's a fantastic initiative, an exciting initiative. And again, using the Good Start newsletters, I've found this talking about natural environments and an example of how this particular service at Shayla Park has had conversations not only with the parents and the children, but also with the local community, the council, to cooperate and to talk about how they could extend the outdoor learning environment for the children by going into the parks and local community and looking at the notion of messy play and sustainability within the park. So there's a project that is running called Wild Things, and there's also been some major funding injected into this program by the local council. So a good example of the outdoor environment and the play space being a negotiated space. Also just wanted to alert you to this program called Nature Explorers, which runs out of the Pottsville Community Preschool. And we're going to hear a bit more about that fairly soon on the website, and so I won't preempt that. But again, another example of educators taking up this notion of of outdoor or natural environments and making a conscious effort and about how they're going to embed that and how they'll use the natural environment. It's, you know, informed and akin to the UK forest schools movement. So there's an awful lot of information that we could touch on here, but I'm aware of the fact that, you know, if you're interested in this topic, it's something that you will research further yourselves. I'm just giving you a very brief overview here. This notion of risky play, again, I'll just touch on it briefly here, and we might get a chance to talk about it more in the tutorials. But I find this interesting because it's kind of behoven on us as educators to make sure that children play in and outdoors, and that we have stimulating and inviting outdoors areas. But there has been for a while, as this article by Neville Dwyer talks about, a fixation on no risk play and what that might be doing to our children and in communities. It's certainly fueled by media and the outside world, and because I think we've become so litigious, the keeping children safe is a tension, I guess, when we're talking about play and this notion of how far do we allow children to go when it comes to this taking risk. And this this concept is one that's certainly been hotly debated, thoroughly discussed, and still interestingly a very topical concept. This survey by Planet Ark, I think, is really interesting, where they surveyed parents, and 73% of them, of the adults, said that they played outside more often than inside when they were children, and yet the same adults said that less than 13% of their own children now play outside, and that disturbingly 1 in 10 children play outside once a week or less. So the notion of or the concept or the question of where do children play is interesting, and the association of that in terms of what we know from research are the benefits of being in the outdoors and in nature, and whether or not as a society we're embracing and celebrating that. And again, Dwyer talks about what we need to do as educators to think about planning for adventurous play, creating opportunities to explore and test your own capacities to manage risk and grow, and encouraging children to take that step that you can do it, and a positive affirmation when children do take a risk, even a small one. But of course, there's always that, you know, the duty of care in terms of monitoring what those risks might be. So that's interesting, and we'll talk, as I said, further about this concept of risky play. You know, in theory, it's obviously very okay. It's whether in practice, how is it okay in a service when that may be litigiously concerned about implications of risky play. So that brings us to the end of this this presentation, and actually to the end of the unit in terms of the topics. Just wanted to finalise, I guess, or wrap up the unit by connecting some of the dots. Ask you to consider what your takeaway messages are. What do you know now that you didn't know before? What have you had confirmed that you already brought to this unit? Or is there, been some change in the way that you think about things in terms of play and pedagogies in the early years? Some new understandings. To me, the big points are the fact that play and pedagogies are underpinned, informed, and constantly being reshaped by theoretical perspectives, be they foundational, old or new, that as educators we need to keep at the fore of our mind the theoretical perspectives that inform our practice, and that our practices are critically reflected upon and constantly re-evaluated and informed by new research, new ideas, parents, children, and the greater community of early years. And then I think there's also been a very strong message that our practices are very closely linked and tied to the policies that we work with, whether they be, obviously in Australia, the Early Years Learning Framework and the National Quality Framework are two major guiding policies that not only inform our understandings of play and pedagogies, but also enable and constrain what it is that we can do as educators. So thank you for hanging in there, and I hope you've enjoyed the unit. It's been a pleasure for me each week to put together these presentations and refresh my knowledge and understanding of what it means to be an educator, and I guess refresh considerations about play and pedagogies in the early years. These are the references that I've used in this particular presentation, and as I said, you'll find lots of other resources on the unit site.